Hello everybody, welcome back. Hope you're all doing well, and let's continue reading Bhagavad Gita. Got this new copy of Bhagavad Gita. The other one was of my friends, so I'm a happy man. So I promised to tell you what happened to Draupadi. Draupadi was the wife of Arjuna, and so she was undressed in the assembly. So how did that happen? What happened was, how did the Pandavas lose their kingdom in the first place? So their father dies and they become the righteous kings of the kingdom. So how did they end up losing the kingdom? That's an interesting story. So what happened was, one of the relatives of Dhritarashtra, he was employed by Dhritarashtra, the uncle of Pandavas, and he was a professional magician, especially in terms of black magic. He knew black magic and how to trick people and how to create different kinds of illusions. So that magician, he went to challenge Yudhishthira. So Yudhishthira was one of the Pandavas and he was brother of Arjuna. He was the oldest son, and he was righteous king of the kingdom. So the etiquette at that time, according what you should do to code of ethics, if someone comes to challenge you and you're the king, you have to accept the challenge, whether it's in the fighting spirit, someone wants to fight you, or whether it's in terms of a game, someone challenges you in a gambling game or something. So you have to accept the challenge. Anyone can do that, right? And interesting point, you say, wow, how is this possible? That's sounds really bad, if I was the king and then anyone could come and challenge me, right? On one side, that's pretty bad, On the other side, that would be good nowadays because, if I see Prime Minister doing something that I don't like, I can go and challenge him and, let's fight, But the problem was Yudhishthira was an amazing fighter. He could fight 100,000 people at once. He was that good. Very good. So was Arjuna. So all of these Pandavas, they were really good fighters. So no one dared to fight them because in that fight they would die, right? That's why they were the kings. They were the most powerful influences. But they were righteous kings. They were protecting the citizens, including not just people, but also animals. And what happened was, so Dhritarashtra, he knew there was no point of fighting for the kingdom because they would lose. So he sent his relative, and that relative, he challenged Yudhishthira for a gambling match. They rolled the dice, and Yudhishthira, he had to accept. Whoever challenges, you have to accept it. And so in the gambling match, you have to have stakes, right? So first it was, I think, money or something. And then the stakes were high as the kingdom. So he had to bet the kingdom. And every time Yudhishthira would lose, because that relative, he knew black magic, he was tricking them, he was not playing by rules. So he would say, something to the dice, and he throw the dice and the dice would show the highest number. So that is cheating, but because Yudhishthira, he was the representation, the personification of morale, of code of ethics. Whatever is right to do, he would do. He wouldn't consider whether he was cheated or not. He would do what was right on his side. So he promised he would, accept the challenge because that's his duty as a king, as a warrior. So he accepted the challenge and he continued to gamble, and he had to continue. And so they bet the kingdom. That relative, he said, okay, now you have to bet your kingdom. And he did. Because he has nothing else to bet. So he bet the kingdom and he lost the kingdom. So that's how Pandavas, how Dhritarashtra became the king, just by cheating. And everyone knew that that Dhritarashtra was cheating the Pandavas. Then what was happening, they didn't get enough. Duryodhana, the son of Dhritarashtra, he really liked the wife of Arjuna, Draupadi. So he said, I want her also. So that relative, he said, you have to bet Draupadi now. You lost your kingdom, now what are you gonna bet? So they bet Draupadi, and they lost Draupadi. Can you imagine that? And he had to accept the challenge, because that's the duty of a warrior. It's the highest morale, the highest ethics. Now everyone is cheating. So yeah, it was sad. And later on, they had to go in exile for 12 years. That was another bet. So they lost again, and then they agreed to go in exile in the forest for 12 years, and they did it. So that's after 12 years they came back, and then they challenged, and there was the war at Kurukshetra. So before Arjuna, decides to get his kingdom back, there is a whole history of what happened to Pandavas. The Pandavas were so tolerable. Imagine, they lost the kingdom, they lost their wife for some time, and then they lost they had to go in exile and live in the forest and eat whatever is available in the forest. So they were the most ethical people in the world. They followed code of conduct and code of ethics and law book just to 100%. So, and they would tolerate everything, although they were cheated. So now they came back, and then they're ready to challenge for the kingdom, because not for themselves, but because what Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana are establishing in the kingdom, they're changing sort of constitution and making illegal things legal, so that's not good. So just for the benefit of the whole population, not being degraded in their consciousness, and continue to progress as a human society, they had to fight over the kingdom and to destroy the kings who were not fit to be the kings. Now coming back to Draupadi, right? So they lost Draupadi, and they brought Duryodhana and his brothers, they brought Draupadi to the assembly, like where all the kings are sitting, sort of, all the, government representatives, everyone. Grandfather Bishma is there. That's what is mentioned in that text. Bishma was there. And Dronacharya and Dhritarashtra, everyone is there. So in that assembly, they begin to undress Draupadi, the most chaste woman. She was so chaste, She wouldn't show her, body open up, like you can see many ladies do these days. They don't understand the power of chastity, unfortunately, because the power of chastity for a woman, if you can keep everything closed, that makes you internally more powerful. That's why they do it. That's what they do in the East, in many countries, even Muslim countries. They will cover their faces. So it creates. On one side, you might think, but that's making women, very dependent on their husband, very, showing her to be lower than the husband. But actually they become so strong internally that they control their husband, although externally it looks like the husband is controlling them. Actually, the husband does whatever the wife says. And that only works if the wife is chaste. If the wife is losing her energy by uncovering her body, then there is big problems. So anyway, it was really bad thing to undress Draupadi in the assembly of all these men. Just imagine how shameful you would be. And she begged, she said, please, she begged to her husband Arjuna. She said, please do something, He He said, no, we can't, we promised, we lost you, and what to do, we can't do much. Then she begged to Bishma, the grandfather, who was the most righteous king also. She said, please save me, I don't want to be undressed here. And he said, I can't do much. That was the deal. And, they were almost crying to see her undressed, but they had to do what was right. And then she was completely, innocent, and they would start undressing her sari. So sari, you gotta wrap it around your body. So they would pull the sari and get her undressed, and she had no other choice but to pray to God. And she was praying, Krishna, please protect me. Krishna is just one of the names of God. She was also praying, Allah, please protect me. But one God, same God. And and that sari would not end. They would just undress her, and that wouldn't end. They would continue to undress her and unwrap her, but that sari was endless. And no one knew what was happening. So God was protecting her. So even though at some point it looks like, circumstances are such that you can't keep your chastity, she was protected by God in these circumstances. So that was the incident that was referred to this, Duryodhana is referring to this incident to indicate that Bhishma Deva was present at that assembly, and he didn't say anything because he is supporting me, he is supporting, my kingdom and my rule, so he has to follow what I say. So he's telling all the kings, Bhishma Deva is a great fighter, you gotta support him. Now let's see what else he says. Text 12. Tasya sanjanayan harsham guru vrita pitamaha simhanadam vinadyochai shankam dadma pratapavan. Then Bhishma, the great, valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy. Purport. The grandsire of the Kuru dynasty could understand the inner meaning of the heart of his grandson Duryodhana, and out of his natural compassion for him, he tried to cheer him by blowing his conch shell very loudly, befitting his position as a lion. Indirectly, by the symbolism of the conch shell, he informed his depressed grandson Duryodhana that he had no chance of victory in the battle, because the Supreme Lord Krishna was on the other side. But still, it was his duty to conduct the fight, and no pains would be spared in that connection. Wow, can you just imagine that? So as soon as Duryodhana tells all the commanders-in-chief that you have to support Bhishma Deva takes a conch shell and he starts blowing it, indicating the beginning, kind of indicating their readiness to fight, like a lion, sounded like a lion. So, and Duryodhana was joyous. And on the one side, what externally is happening is Bhishma Deva saying, yeah, you're my grandson, I have some affection for you, therefore I'm gonna blow this conch shell to show you that I'm going to fight against my other grandsons, like Pandavas. So I'm not backing off, that's my duty. And he did, he fought until the end. So that just shows that in the Vedic time, 5,000 years ago, people were driven by not their likes, what they like to do. I like to do this or I like to do that. And not by their rights. They were not saying like, this is my right, I have to fight for my rights. They were fighting according to their duty, what was right to do, what was in general right to do. So if that means you have to lose your kingdom, and that's the right thing to do, you do it. If that means to lose your own life and die, and you're gonna die on the battlefield, you still do it, because that's the right thing to do. So how do you know what's the right thing to do? That's something that is coming up in this book, also to understand, because Arjuna is confused. He should fight, or maybe he shouldn't fight. So what's the right thing to do? And Krishna will tell him. But let's continue. Text 13. Tata shankascha biryascha panavanaka gomukha sahasaiva vyahanyanta sa shabdas tumulo bhavat. After that, the conchs, drums, bugles, trumpets, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. Text 14. Tata shvitair hayar yukti mahati syandani stito madava pandavascheva divyo shankao pradad matu. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conchs. Purport. In contrast with the conchal blown by Bhishma Deva, the conchs in the hands of Krishna and Arjuna are described as transcendental. The sounding of the transcendental conchs indicated that there was no hope of victory for the other side because Krishna was on the other side of the Pandavas. Jayastu Pandu Putranam Yasham Pakshe Janardana. Victory is always with persons like the sons of Pandu because Lord Krishna is associated with them. And whenever and wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also there because the goddess of fortune never leaves alone without her husband. Therefore, victory and fortune were awaiting Arjuna, as indicated by the transcendental sound produced by the conchal of Vishnu or Lord Krishna. Besides that, the chariot on which both the friends were situated had been donated by Agni, the fire god, to Arjuna, and this indicated that this chariot was capable of conquering all sides wherever it was drawn over the three worlds. Well, a lot of things happening here. So, yeah, the conchs that Krishna and Arjuna blew are described here as transcendental, so beyond material conceptions. And the sounding of these conchs indicated there was no hope of victory for the other side, because Krishna was fighting on the side of Arjuna and the Pandavas. Interesting. Another promise, actually before the fight happened, something to keep in mind. Krishna, he offered Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra. He said, "What do you want? Do you want me to be on your side, or do you want to be my army to be on your side? You can choose one." And guess what Duryodhana chose? He chose Krishna's army, because Krishna's army was the most powerful army in the whole world. So, yeah, and so Pandavas, they got Krishna on their side, and they wanted Krishna on their side. It's not like if they had a choice, they would have chosen Krishna's army. No, they wanted just one Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, on their side. And Krishna made a promise he would not fight in this battle also. So what do you choose? God's army, hundreds and probably even like millions of troops, the great warriors, or the God himself, who promises not to fight on your side, but be on your side? So Pandavas chose Krishna on their side. So, yeah, and that just indicated the victory, because they chose God and they knew what was the right thing to do. Another factor which is described here is that the chariot of Arjuna was donated by Agni, the fire god. So does it mean that in Vedas there are many gods? No. So in Vedas there is only one god. In Hinduism, which is just a small reflection of Vedas, there is only one god. People get confused. They think that in Hinduism there are many gods, or Vishnu, Shiva, Krishna. Who is your god? Ganesh. So no, actually there is only one god, Krishna. And God has many names, like Vishnu, like Jehovah, like Allah, different names. Then you say, how can God have many names? But think about yourself, you also have many names, My name is, Russian name is Yaroslav. Sometimes they call me Yarik. I have second name. I have my last name. I have middle name, according to my father's name. So I have many names also. So if I can have many names, how come God cannot have many names? He can. So there is only one God. He has many names. That's the concept of Vedic. That's what Vedas tell us, Vedic culture. And the idea is, who is this Agni? Agni is mentioned as a fire god. So different elements like fire, water, sun, moon, air, ether, like wind. So all these material elements, different planets, they all have their own demigods, the managers of this specific element or planet. So they're managing the universe. So fire has a demigod who is managing the fire. And his name is Agni. And that also is similar to Russian word which indicates fire, Ogony or Agni. So that's, Russian language is quite close to Sanskrit. And so Agni, he donated the chariot to Arjuna. And that chariot could tolerate all kind of, weapons. If you shoot arrows, it would not get destroyed, like if you burn it, it won't get destroyed. If you, smash it with the stones, it won't get destroyed. So it was really powerful chariot. Any kind of weapon, it would not get destroyed by. So that also kind of showed that Arjuna was invincible in a sense. So we'll finish here for tonight. Thank you for tuning in. It gets really interesting the more we read this book, and trust me, it will get even more interesting, and we can go deeper and we can see the depression of Arjuna. Arjuna falls into depression. He has a lot of stress and anxiety. So Krishna helps him out, helps him to come out from this depression and anxiety by instructing him. And that's what this book is about, to help us out also, to come out from doubt, depression, anxiety, uncertainty, what to do next, what's the right thing to do. So please stay tuned, and I will see you in the next episode. Hare Krishna.